before putting the intake manifold on. It's a really good idea to just check everything. Make sure you got these all good. This is good. The hose clamps are in everywhere. Double check. Make sure you didn't knock this thing loose while you were wiggling this one, getting the intake manifold out. That's a big one you don't want to miss. And just do an overall check. Make sure that vacuum line's in. I'm gonna put this on. See, we got these two bolts that I just threaded back in there. I'll put that in there. Torque spec's probably 9 Newton meters. Probably doesn't matter much for that because it's not a sealing surface. But I'll do 9 Newton meters. I got this sensor. Gotta plug that in. Press that down. I've got this sensor I gotta plug in. I can just plug this in right now. Okay, that one's in. So, yep. And then I'm gonna throw the EGR cooler back on there. I got my EGR cooler installed. I got the 4 bolts in over there. Torqued them to 9 Newton meters. I got that in. That's good. You got to be careful when you're doing this part to make sure that that little, I don't even know what it's called. It's like a thin piece of metal that goes in between there. It's like a seal or something. You got to make sure that that doesn't get damaged or fall out of place when you install that part. Time to put this intake manifold back on. I got all my gaskets in there, situated good. Make sure they're all clean. That's one thing you have to check every time you're about to put on an intake manifold. This intake manifold is really difficult to put on. It's gonna fight me the whole way, but basically, see that part right there? You gotta slide that underneath these hoses, coming in kind of like that, and then you gotta just wiggle it in until it finally goes. And then like that high pressure fuel line is gonna fight you also. Yeah, it's a pain, but once it finally goes in, and then it's easy. You can just slip the bolts in and torque them all down. I got the intake manifold on. Before I torque this stuff down up top and everything, I'm going to do the front first actually. The only point in putting this on first was that this was out of the way and it was a lot easier to just pop it in there. But at this point, I'm going to reassemble the front first, then do that. I'm going to put this thing on first. I got my bolts right here. This bolt is longer than the rest of them by just barely, like you can see that. It's just a little bit longer. If I remember correctly, it was this hole, but it's really easy to tell. Basically, when you stick everything in, if one bolt is just poking really far out, then you know that the longer bolt should not be there. And if you stick everything in and one bolt isn't even hitting the threads, you know that's where the longer bolt needs to be. So the only thing that's going to kind of fight me is this part. It's going to go right there. And the way you're going to have to do this is you're going to have to situate the part. You're going to have to poke it through there, get that thing in there, and then you can put it in position, and then you can torque everything down, and then you can put this down too. That's how this is going to go. I almost forgot to put this piece on. It's an M10. Those two goes right there. One thing I found on this, it's easier if you slide this part in there first, and then while you're putting it into position, you got to watch that carefully. It's going into there, and you also have to put this piece on there when you're sliding it in. It's a little bit of finesse, but once you've got it, then you've got it, and it's not too terrible. Okay, I got that thing on there, torqued down. I got this thing going. All the bolts stick out about that long when you first stick them in. A super long one goes into there. Let's, just for reference, goes into there, and you can tell it when you stick this long one in one of the other holes. It just pokes out really far, like way farther than that. So it's always obvious to tell if the bolt is too long. I'm gonna have to remember to put this hose clamp on there, put this hose clamp on there after I'm done torquing this down and it's in the proper position. The torque spec on this is 9 Newton meters. It doesn't give me a torquing sequence, so just go crisscross pattern. I'm going to put this dipstick back in so that we don't have to risk any fluid getting in that hole. We got this screw, and it just goes in. See that? Right there, and then up there. This part attaches to part of the intake manifold, so I'm not going to be able to put this screw in yet, but I can do this one. Okay, so it turns out this was actually plugged into the wrong area. I routed it wrong. This one, the connection is exactly the same. It goes in here. This is actually why I didn't torque down the intake manifold, was because I was thinking that this one might be incorrect. In reality, you're supposed to route it this way. And then it plugs in right here. It comes in through that part and goes in right there. So I'm going to try to route it without taking off the intake manifold. I think I can do it. Okay, I was able to get that routed just fine. I got it plugged into right here. I'll show you how it's been routed. I looked through some of my old video footage when I was taking this apart to see how it was originally, so yeah, this is correct. You see that? Just routed right there. And this intake manifold was able to move around enough just fine because I didn't torque it down yet. At this point though, it is ready to be torqued. There's for sure nothing else that I could have missed. That was the only thing that I was thinking, like, is that right? I'm going to go ahead and torque down the intake manifold now and just do everything up top. The way you do this, so the torque spec is 9 Newton meters. According to the book, all it says is you do the inner ones first, the 4 inner ones, you go this one, that one, that one, that one, and then it says you do any pattern with the rest of them, but I always just do crisscrossy. And you know, it's the same 9 Newton meter. And it is always a good idea to double check that they're all 9 Newton meters when you're dealing with gasket services like that, because this, I guess, I don't know if you would call them an O-ring or whatever, that rubber gasket, they always settle. The intake manifold is torqued down while I'm up here. I'm gonna put this, what is it? I'm gonna put this coolant hose back in there before I forget. And this thing is kind of a pain because there's a hose clamp. You have to basically squeeze the hose clamp, leave it there, and then you put the plastic stem in there in that tube, and then you can let go of the hose clamp. It's really tight, it's really annoying, but it's not too terrible. I got that part done. Now I'm going to torque down that one to 17 millimeter. And then I'll get the tube that goes coming across, that goes from there to there. That tube though, you have to orient it right. You can't put it backwards, it isn't going to work. This fuel pipe got installed. It's the same 17 millimeter. You can see it goes that way, and then it attaches right there. It's a little tight, but it's not that bad. And this is the way it's supposed to go. If you try to rotate this, and then that curve is going to try to point this way, and that's wrong. The next step is going to be putting this piece on. How does this go? Yeah, I'll figure this out, but yeah. I'm going to throw this piece on, it goes here. I'll show how this is done after I got it stuck on there. This part has been installed. There was just the aluminum bolt there going into the EGR cooler. Plastic bolt there going into the intake manifold. You got the 2 vacuum lines. These are different sizes, and so they're easy to not mix up. But you know, this one goes there. The one going deep into the deep into that alleyway under the intake manifold goes right there. And you got a plug connection right there. Now I'm gonna throw this on there. Just sits on there somehow. You got your 2 things. It's easy to make it not backwards, but I'll throw this one on and then I'll show you the orientation of it. There's the orientation right there. This part with the hose clamp goes to the driver's side, and then these parts connect, like it like slides in there. I'll put that together and then I'll show that. The only thing to note here is the EGR cooler line. It's kind of weird. It goes this way, then it routes and goes right here. So I don't know, it's weird. You go like that, you route it, you skip the thing, and then you put it backwards. Oh man, you can't even tell what I'm trying to point out. It's too tight. But yeah, this is the EGR adapter. Slips in there and then plugs into this one. And then these ones are pretty simple. That part slips into the metal thing, and then this thing, and then this end just plugs into there. I got this tightened down. Now I can plug in the sensor there and the sensor there on the EGR cooler. I was thinking back, if I remember correctly, this area being assembled, it was kind of getting in the way of this stuff. So I'm gonna pause on the top part. It's basically done. You just need to do that, which is like nothing. I'm gonna go back to here. I'm gonna put this part back on. I got this thing cleaned up and ready to go back in. Basically, this is that one that had that super annoying bolt right there. That very unfortunate one. But the way this is gonna go, basically you stick that one on to that black thing right there. On this thing, I got it cleaned up and everything. And then you can bolt it up right there. Bolt it up right there at the same time. And then you can stick the unfortunate bolt in right there. And then the easy bolt in right there. And that's how this is gonna go. I'm gonna go through and I'm gonna install, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bolts. We have the, I'm gonna be able to show it basically. Yeah, just the bolts over there. And then we had bolts on the other side over there. I got the third one in. I showed this when I was taking it apart, but I'll show it again. This one is really hard. It's in a really tight area. Let's see. Let's see if I can find it. Okay, yep, yeah, you see it? It's right there. Right there. So I gotta start it. I'm not gonna tighten it down until I get all of them in. I had to look back to the old camera footage. I forgot. The last two go right there. And then right there. Yeah, right there. That part's done. I gotta plug this in. This one in. And then this this whole step is pretty much done. I can throw this in and then tighten down that hose clamp. I'll do that later. I'll do that when I'm not videoing. At this point, all there is to do up front is just mostly reassembling these pulleys. And after that, you could do like the piping and then the fan shroud. And then that's pretty much it. So I'm going to start with doing this, putting this one there, that pulley, and I'll torque that one down. That torque spec is 23 Newton meters. I'll put this on. I can't torque it yet, so the engine will just spin. And I'll put this on, and I can't torque this one either yet, because this pulley will just spin. I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to put the serpentine belt on, and then I can torque it then. Okay, so I got this on just like before. I had that go down. These are on, they are not tight. These are not tight either. I got this pulley on, this on. I actually can torque this down right now before putting on the serpentine belt. The torque for that one is 23 Newton meters for these three. this bolt there, the torquing spec is 50 Newton meters plus 90 degrees. See, is that right? Tensioner 50 Newton meters plus 90, and you do need to replace that bolt. This 50 Newton meter is a different spec if it's a different bolt. I believe it's 60 Newton meters if you have the other bolt. And then it's plus 90 degrees as well for that other bolt. I just checked the manual. If you have the M10 bolts, then your torque spec is going to be 50 Newton meters plus an additional 90 degrees. If you have the M11 bolt, your torque spec is going to be 60 Newton meters plus an additional 90 degrees. This bolt cannot be reused. You have to replace it.